for chicken guts, I need you to wash it really, really good before Vic cuts vegetables on it so we don't have raw chicken vegetables, okay? Is that the intro to your video?
Yep, sure is. Okay, put it down.
Well, I have to use it for chicken guts first. That's what I was just saying.
Okay. Hello, Jacksonites. A surprise extra final video for this year. And as teased at the end of my Q&A video, today I will be reviewing, hands down, one of the most divisive and controversial films of the entire Godzilla franchise, with the 51st episode of Super Kaiju Binge and the season finale of Super Kaiju Binge for this year. It's fitting that since this year I've been doing a lot of milestone events for the kaiju genre, Godzilla 2014, King Kong 05, Cloverfield, Pacific Rim. It's only fitting that we end the year off with yet another milestone film in the Godzilla franchise. 2016's Shin Godzilla, or Godzilla Resurgence, or Shin Gojira, whichever title fits this movie best. I prefer the title Shin Godzilla myself, even though I jump back and forth between Shin Godzilla and Shin Gojira. But since this movie is such a monumental occasion, I can't do it alone. I especially cannot do it alone in person. Hopefully you can see her. We have Victoria back on the show.
Hi, guys.
And I hope you guys approve of the Return of Godzilla background. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's jump right into your personal history, shall we? Since you're my guest, you can go first.
Well, there's not much to this one. A lot was going on in my life. I didn't get to see this movie until like 2017, I think.
Same.
And it was sort of a little bit on my radar. And my friend Tiffany, who is obsessed with Godzilla, asked me, "Have you seen Shin Godzilla yet?" And I was like, "Oh, no, not yet." And she was like, and so I thought, oh, I should see this. So I watched it with my dad. And I'm not good at shades. And I didn't really know what to expect.
Does your dad know about this?
That it's happening right now? No.
Yeah. Oh, you may need to rectify that soon.
He'll know eventually. I'll tell him.
Okay.
But should I say what I thought of it yet?
You can be vague. Yeah.
We're gonna get into a fist fight later. That's what I think. But yeah, not much to it. But when I finally did see it, I was very glad I saw it.
What's your dad's name again?
Bob.
That's one.
Robert.
Robert. Yeah, that's one. Hi, Robert. Okay, so I have a lot to say about this movie from my personal history. So,
but first,
oh yes, of course. Before we get into it, a word from our sponsors. Happy birthday, Godzilla!
Happy birthday!
69 giggity.
Nice.
Okay, so Shin Godzilla, of course, was a very big deal when it came out. This was the first Japanese Godzilla film in 12 years. And this was when it was Because for a little while after Godzilla 2014, I was kind of afraid that the return of the big G would be very small, and just as like a little refresher to throw out just to make people aware that, yeah, the franchise is still here. But when this movie was coming out, this was when I just got this overwhelming sensation that, okay, the kaiju genre is back in full swing. So how I became aware of this movie is a bit odd. So, at the time, I was still subscribed to Bill Wurster, aka Zazubar, and he did a gigantic 2.5 hour long review of Godzilla 2014 as an addendum to his Godzilla Palooza series. Great Godzilla review series you should check out. And the entire time I'm listening to this, I'm just completely captivated and enjoying Bill's return to Godzilla Palooza. But then at the very last minute of this video was when he dropped the news that there was yet another Japanese Godzilla movie on the horizon, simply titled Shin Godzilla. So I was like, what? So then after that, nothing. Zero, nada, zilch news, at least that I heard. At the time when marketing and trailers began for this film, I remember the very first teaser was just like handheld camera footage of somebody running around, a bunch of people running around from something, and then we saw the screen shake, and then Godzilla's tail come sweeping over a bunch of buildings, and then that was it. So I was like, oh, Godzilla's back. At the time, I was a member of both Toku Legion and Adam Noise's from AN Productions Facebook fan group, Geeks for Geeks. So, of course, as soon as trailers and marketing started, both of those groups got flooded with news, and, that's when the hype started. Of course, I was very excited, but I was also a little frustrated because the marketing for this movie, Toho was very much a fan of blue ballsing the audience. They would release the tiniest snippets of footage of Godzilla from this movie.
Good.
Technically, yes, but for somebody like me who's not patient, aggravating as fuck. But as the marketing and hype kept growing and growing, they would, of course, release more stuff here and there. But what really lit the fire of hype for me for this film was when the set photos of Godzilla's design for this movie were leaked in, I believe, late 2015 or very early 2016. And that created a huge explosion in the Kaiju fan base. Like, everybody was just saying, oh my God, this is the new Godzilla design. Look how different it is. I am so excited for this. As was I. I was very, very excited for this movie. Like, I would almost have dreams of seeing this film. I was so excited. So the film finally premiered in Japan, and this movie did have an extremely limited U.S. release in theaters, in select theaters. And I think it was only over here for a week, maybe less. But a lot of members of both Toku Legion and Geeks for Geeks went out to see this film in theaters. And very quickly, the reception to this film was extremely divisive. We'll get back to that in a little bit. As for me, I did not see this in theaters. Pardon, Roman. I had to wait the ungodly long amount of time that it took for this movie to come to Blu-ray and DVD in the States. It was very similar to the two live-action Attack on Titan films. Shin Godzilla did not come out on home video in the States until well over a year after Shin Godzilla's release in late 2017, I believe. But of course, when it was released, I ran out and I snatched this movie up quicker than you could snap your fingers. I got the Blu-ray combo pack. I do have the Blu-ray, which is the proper way to see this movie, in my opinion. I gave the DVD disc to my friend Grayson at the time. And
I watched it on Blu-ray the first time.
I definitely saw why this movie was very divisive, but I tried to give it the benefit of the doubt. But then I think it was at the tail end of 2017 or maybe the early months of 2018 when it was announced that this movie would not be getting a sequel, that my opinion on this movie started to really sour. So going back to what I was talking about previously, when Shin Godzilla came out, it created a massive explosion in the Godzilla fan base. And so in my opinion, there are 4 different categories of people who have feelings towards this film. There are those who love it and say that it's one of the best Godzilla films of the entire franchise. There are those who like it and acknowledge that it's a good movie, but they have others that they prefer over this. There are those who think that it's okay, but it's not even close to being one of their favorites. And there are those who hate it and say it is one of the worst Godzilla films of the entire franchise and is a complete piece of garbage. I've seen individuals fall into all 4 of these categories. You have people like Adam Noyes from AM Productions who absolutely loves this movie and says it's one of his favorites and is one of the best. Then there's this one right here. And then there is Patrick Galvin. I don't remember his channel name. Who calls this one of the weakest installments of the entire franchise, if not the weakest. So which one of those do you fall into?
I love it. Oh my God. It's incredible.
Me, I fall somewhere between the 3rd and 4th categories. I do not think that this is one of the worst Godzilla films of the franchise.
Well, that's because you're not totally stupid.
But it is one of my least favorites. It is kind of high on that least favorite scale, or like it's low. Like I don't dislike this movie nearly as much as like say Mothra 92 or the anime trilogy. But yeah, this will be a very fun discussion because it's one of her favorites, presumably.
Oh yeah.
And this is one of my least favorites. So yeah, this will be a lot of fun. And going back to, I think this movie started what I call a fandom war. Because in Toku Legion in particular, which is one of the biggest reasons why I left that group, and why I think that is the most toxic kaiju fan group I've ever been a part of. People would viciously both defend and rip this movie apart. Those who loved it would viciously lash out at those who hated it, and those who hated it would viciously lash out at those who loved it. Not in the playful, fun way that her and I are about to do. Like, they would, like, tear them down and just call them retards or ignoramuses or some shit, and just tear them absolutely apart based on whether or not they liked or disliked this movie. And it was really toxic and really off-putting. This movie spawned the lowest point of the Godzilla fan base that I have ever seen. Unfortunately, I got caught up into a lot of that toxicity, which is something that nearly like kind of killed not the franchise for me, but just having an interest in being a part of the Godzilla fan base. It really like was like this close to just completely killing my faith in the fan base for me. And yeah, it was rough. I've seen Shin Godzilla 4 times in its near 8 years since its release. And each time I watch it, so when I originally saw it, I was in the second category. I liked it, but there was just things about it that I wasn't a big fan of. But upon each subsequent rewatch, it just keeps losing value for me as time goes on. So yeah, this movie has an interesting legacy behind itself, and it has an...
That's the best MonsterVerse movie, by the way. Godzilla vs. Kong. Yeah. It's the best one. It's better than King of the Monsters. Go ahead.
Alrighty then. Yeah, this movie has an interesting legacy, and it'll certainly be interesting to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything you want to add before we move on?
Have you really seen it 4 times?
Mhm.
Okay.
Why?
Nothing.
Well, I have seen it only 4 times, but I've rewatched certain scenes from this film many, many, many times. Namely, his first atomic breath and the ending. But more on that later. So, Shin Godzilla is a 2016 Japanese kaiju film directed by legendary Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi, with a screenplay by Anno and visual effects by Higuchi. Hideaki Anno being the man who created the Neon Genesis Evangelion franchise.
Okay. Can I talk about that for a second? Okay. So I have not seen that whole series. I want to. I just never got around to it. When I was oh my God, what's the math? When I was 12 or 11, 11, right? In 2001 or whatever, 2000 and 2001. That's when I watched it.
13.
Really? Okay. Anyway, yeah, in the year 2000/2001, I would watch a handful of episodes on a few VHS tapes over and over and over, and listen to the soundtracks I got at the Chillerthon in New Jersey over and over and over, and go on the internet and like I don't know, look at artwork and stills from the show and everything, and that's how you were a fan of anime back in the year 2000.
The dark days.
Yeah, and so I was like a huge fan of Neon Genesis, however you said that word, because back in the day there was no idea. And I still have an issue with saying it because I've heard so many ways of pronouncing it that I can't like automatically say it correctly, so I'll just call it Neon Genesis. But anyway,
or NGE.
I love it. Everything I've seen of it, I love. I'll watch the whole thing sometime.
Hey guys,
But-
you remember that Blu-ray set that I got last year that I reviewed with Shawnee Boy? I gave it to her because I hate the show so much.
Oh my God. See, like, he doesn't like good things a lot of the time. But we'll get into that later. Anyway, the no sequel. Oh yeah.
Yeah, don't get me started.
I don't think it needed a sequel.
I do.
I think it would have been great if it got one, of course, like really phenomenal, but I don't think it like misses anything by not having it. But we'll get into that later.
Not counting any of the pachinko or VR crossovers with Shin Godzilla and Neon Genesis Evangelion. Those are non-canon to this film, and they're shorts. And for some reason, Toho keeps footage of those crossovers under extremely tight wraps. So I don't even like to acknowledge those sometimes.
Can I have the cold one, please?
And it falls.
Thank you.
That's just rude. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And of course, Shinji Higuchi was the man who did the special effects for the Heisei Gamera films. And he also was one of the co-directors of the previous year's Attack on Titan duology. So ironically, this movie has a lot in common with both Evangelion and Attack on Titan.
Which is amazing. I approve of that.
Produced by Toho Pictures and Cine Bazaar and distributed by Toho, it is the 31st film in the Godzilla franchise, the 29th film produced by Toho, and Toho's third reboot of the franchise, although this film does introduce the 11th incarnation of Godzilla on the big screen, and is the first film in the franchise's Reiwa era. It is the first reboot of a tokusatsu series to be adapted by Anno and Higuchi, followed by Shin Ultraman in 2022, which technically is out, but we still haven't seen it because of its shitty release.
I know.
And Shin Kamen Rider from 2023, which we will probably never, ever see because Toho doesn't want American fans to see Kamen Rider.
I think you can watch it on Amazon.
I don't have that.
I do.
I don't support that either.
Oh my God.
In December of 2014, Toho announced plans for a new domestic Godzilla film. Anno and Higuchi were announced as the directors in March of 2015, and principal photography began in September of 2015 and ended in October of... Damn, really? In October of 2015, so a month? Inspiration for the film was drawn from the Fukushima nuclear disaster and the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. Shin Godzilla was theatrically released July 29th, 2016. It received critical acclaim from Japanese critics and mixed reviews from Western critics. The film grossed $78 million worldwide against a budget of 1 billion yen. I think I remember reading somewhere it was about a $15 million budget in American money. And it was the highest grossing film, live action Japanese film of 2016. And it became the highest grossing Japanese produced Godzilla film in the entire franchise. It does seem like Godzilla -1 is on track to potentially rival this film in terms of success. But we're not going to talk about Godzilla -1 here. It received 11 Japan Academy Prize nominations and won 7, including Picture of the Year and Director of the Year. We're going to jump back and forth with the plots again. Okay. With that being said, you want to go first?
Sure. When the Japan Coast Guard investigates an abandoned yacht in Tokyo Bay, their boat is destroyed at the Tokyo Bay and the Tokyo Aqua Bay line is flooded. After seeing a viral video of the incident, Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Rondo Yaguchi believes it was caused by a living creature, which is confirmed as news reports reveal its tail emerging from the ocean. Shortly thereafter, the creature moves inland, crawling through the Kamada district of Tokyo, leaving a path of death and destruction during an inadequate evacuation. The creature quickly evolves into a bipedal form, but overheats and returns to the sea.
The government officials focus on military strategy and civilian safety. Yaguchi is put in charge of a task force researching the creature. With high radiation readings from the creature's path, they realize that it is energized by nuclear fission. The U.S. sends a special envoy, Kayako Ann Patterson, who is very similar to Asuka Langley Soryu in personality.
Yeah.
Thankfully, she's not nearly as obnoxious, but her personality is very similar. Who reveals that Goro Maki, a disgraced anti-nuclear zoology professor, studied mutations caused by radioactive contamination, predicting the appearance of the creature. Maki was disbelieved by both American and Japanese scientific circles. The U.S. then prevented him from making his conclusions public. The abandoned yacht in Tokyo Bay was Maki's, who left his research notes jumbled into a code on the boat before disappearing. Hold on. Okay, there you go.
The creature, named Godzilla after Maki's research, reappears in its fourth form, twice its original size, making landfall near Kamakura. The Japan Self-Defense Forces mobilize but prove ineffective as Godzilla breaks through their defenses into Tokyo. The U.S. intervenes with a massively destructive airstrike plan, prompting the evacuation of civilians and government personnel. Godzilla is wounded with MOP bunker buster bombs, but responds with destructive atomic rays fired from its mouth and dorsal plates, destroying the helicopter carrying the Prime Minister along with top government officials and incinerating large swaths of Tokyo. Depleting its energy, Godzilla enters a dormant state and becomes immobile.
Which really brings to mind Raymond Burr's iconic line from Godzilla King of the Monsters, 1956. Godzilla has turned the heart of Tokyo into a sea of fire. Literally. Yaguchi's team discovers that Godzilla's plates and blood work as a cooling system, theorizing that they could use a coagulating agent to freeze it. Analyzing tissue samples, it's discovered that Godzilla is an ever-evolving creature able to reproduce asexually. Where's the fun in that? The United Nations, aware of this, informs Japan that thermonuclear weapons will be used against Godzilla should the Japanese fail to subdue it in a few days. Evacuations are ordered in multiple prefectures in preparation. Unwilling to see nuclear weapons detonated in Japan again, Patterson uses her political connections to buy time for Yaguchi's team, in whom the interim government has little faith.
Yaguchi's team manages to decipher Goro Maki's encoded research using origami.
Damn.
They adjust their plan and procure the means to conduct their deep freeze plan with international support. Hours before the planned nuclear attack, Japan enacts the deep freeze plan.
Operation Yashiori.
Godzilla is provoked into expending its atomic breath and energy against drones. The team then detonates nearby buildings and trains toward Godzilla's feet, subduing it and allowing tankers full of coagulant to inject it into Godzilla's mouth. Many are killed, but Godzilla is frozen solid.
In the aftermath, the Godzilla fallout is discovered to have a very short half-life and that Tokyo can soon be reconstructed. The international community agrees to cancel the nuclear attack on condition that in the event of Godzilla's reawakening, an immediate thermonuclear strike will be executed. On Godzilla's tail, Humanoid creatures appear frozen in the process of emerging, reaching out to the sky. Cut to black.
So good.
Not.
So good.
So, how about this plot?
I think it's exactly what it needs to be for what the movie is, which is brilliant. It's a monster movie. It's about Godzilla. Well, where do I start? There's so much to it. And I think there's just more than meets the eye, and you're not willing to see it. That's what I see. That's what I think.
No, I see a lot of things that this movie is going for, but just because you can see something and just because you can understand something doesn't mean you have to like it.
I never said you have to like it.
I know, but still. Okay, was that it?
I think it's fine. I don't think it needs to be more than that because it's so much. There's so many ways you can enjoy it, so much you can get out of it. And for me personally, the horror of Godzilla as a monster and what it says about people and decision making and whatever is just, it gets the point across in a way that I thought was great. I don't have an issue with it. So what do you have to say to rip it apart?
Well, I have seen people try to say that this is a remake of the original Gojira. I do not think this is the case. This will lead into one of my pros, so I'm going to try to keep this one as a little vague. But there's a lot about this movie that I do respect and admire. This is a new version of the original Gojira.
Definitely.
Not in the way of remaking the original Gojira, but I would definitely say it's more like a reimagining. It takes the very basic structure of the original Gojira and it evolves it, no pun intended, as Godzilla evolves in this film, into something modern and new, which is fresh and new. No, don't believe that.
Huh?
Which is fresh and new, but it does feel familiar in a good way, kind of like Tremors 5 a little bit. You can tell that the filmmakers are big fans of Godzilla, and there is a lot of that passion and drive thrown into this movie as both a loving homage to classic Godzilla, but also the desire to, I think it was Hideaki Anno who said behind the scenes, create the greatest living nightmare, I think. And in some ways he succeeds, but there's many elements to this film that really hold it back for me and make this movie be kind of a huge gargantuan chore to sit through. There are good things about this film, but they're mostly, in my opinion, objective. So yeah, there's not a lot about this film that works for me personally, but it is a good Godzilla movie. It does a good job at conveying its message, and it does do a very good job of reintroducing Godzilla to, in particular, Japanese audiences, as this was the first proper Japanese Godzilla movie in 12 years. But you could also argue this was the first time that Godzilla was really taken back to its roots, kind of since the return of Godzilla back here. Dark, gritty, Godzilla's by himself. It's just about humans reacting to the emergence of Godzilla. It does feel reminiscent of the return of Godzilla. But in some ways it's good, but in others it's frustrating as hell. How many pros you got?
Hold on, let me see.
So to wrap up, yeah, there's things about it that I like, but there's many elements that just don't work for me. And I may as well get into this. Aside from the return of Godzilla, I'm not a big fan of solo Godzilla films. And I think of all, I haven't seen -1 yet, but I think of all the solo Godzilla films, this is easily my least favorite. So pros.
Is it what? Out of all the Godzilla films, this is your least favorite?
All the solo Godzilla films.
Okay. You like 2014 better than this?
By a mile.
Okay. Boy. Yeah, this is coming from someone who doesn't think Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein is the best Abbott and Costello movie. He likes Age of Ultron. What's another unbelievable movie opinion? He doesn't like The Shining. Anyway, oh, you want me to get into my first pro or what?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, the obvious one is Godzilla, but not just him, but his evolution, like the fact that he evolves or transforms, but I like how they call it evolving because that adds a new dimension to it. Because it's such a big,
or mutates.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love how he looks in every version, in every form. And I love the idea behind it when he does it. This kind of, okay, this is a different pro, but I'll just like put it in with it because of how he looks. The effects are phenomenal. The practical effects, just all of his designs, the fact that he had multiple designs, like everything about Godzilla, I loved so much. He was terrifying. When he was the tail whipping around, like, I know you don't see his full body, but I feel like he wasn't much more than that. Like, it would make sense that he wasn't much more than that until his land form. And I hate to say this because I feel like this shouldn't be true, but when he's in his like baby fish form, he's so cute. Yeah, oh my god, he's so cute.
As ugly cute.
He's adorable. But at the same time, if you overlook the cuteness, it's pretty terrifying because, like, what the hell is this? Like, the gates of hell have opened. Like, what is happening? And yeah, all his transformations and everything, when he starts getting bigger and he just looks so scary. And and you can tell it's Godzilla, but the whole time I watched the movie, like even this time around watching it, I feel like I was watching Godzilla, like seeing Godzilla the character for the first time ever, in the most horrifying, effective way. And I absolutely love, enjoy, and admire that about this movie. So that's a huge, huge pro for me.
Okay. Well, we'll jump back and forth between. Oops, sorry, I stubbed your toe. I have. Damn, where the hell is it? Here we are. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pros, 2 mixed elements, and 10 cons. Pro number 1 is the music. The music for Shin Godzilla was done by Shiro Sagisu, I think. Is a Japanese composer, arranger, and music producer with a career spanning over 40 years. He is best known for his works as a record producer for acts including various choir members like Mike Wizgowski, Misia, Satoshi Tomie, and Ken Hirai. Sagisu has also worked as a film composer for several anime and films, being well known for his collaborations with Gainax, especially in the soundtrack of Neon Genesis Evangelion, because of course. For other anime he did Evangelion, Bleach, Skullman, Black Bullet, Berserk, SS Gridman, SS Dyna Xenon, and the new Berserk film and the new Bleach film. As for films, he did the music for the Rebirth Evangelion films, as well as the End of Evangelion, Bleach, Memories of Nobody. And as for theatrical films, he did Shin Ultraman, Shin Godzilla, and the 2 Attack on Titan films. So, yeah, he has a good working relationship with Hideaki Anno. And, yeah, I like the music. They do reuse a lot of Akira Fukube music, but I'll save that for one of my other pros. But the original music that he has for this film is quite good. It feels fresh and new, but it also does feel very appropriate for Godzilla. There's a lot of songs that were done in this film that were actually sung in English. Let's see. There's a soundtrack somewhere. Oh, I don't know. Crap. I don't know what the hell it's called. Yeah, there's a lot of songs that were done for this film, like the song that plays when Godzilla first fires his atomic breath, which is probably my least favorite song in the whole movie. But my favorite is Persecution of the Masses, which sadly plays when Kamata-kun is crawling around and destroying that little district. I wish that was played when Godzilla first fired his atomic breath, but that piece of music is awesome. It's beautiful. It's haunting. It fills you with a feeling of dread, hopelessness, and despair, but it also fills you with awe and wonder. So it's a great piece of music. Spencer Matako. Oh, is that... Okay. Is a okay Godzilla. You like Oreos? Not much to say about the music. They do also use some music from Neon Genesis Evangelion, namely that drum beat piece of music. Whenever there's a technobabble scene in Evangelion, they reuse that for a lot of...
That's one of my mixed elements. Music is one of my pros, but that is one of my mixed elements.
Why? Because it's annoying and repetitive?
Yeah.
It is.
I do. Can I talk about that, or you want to finish?
What do you want to talk about your mixed element?
Yeah, I mean, because see, we're not on the same page, so I don't know whether to talk about this during mixed elements or during your pro.
Actually, no. Go ahead. This is interesting. Oh, watch Evangelion. That piece of music gets old quick.
Yeah, I know. And like I said, I had the soundtracks and I listened to the hell out of them in 2000, 2001. And there are so many versions of that. I heard it so many times. So I know. But yeah, the thing is, it is annoying and I got sick of it real fast in this movie. But I do appreciate how it was used, even though I didn't like it. Because I believe that piece is called Decisive Battle. Unless that was a different one, but I'm pretty sure that one is it. Which is a very appropriate title.
Yes.
And I think when it was used, it was appropriate. And the way it like morphs throughout the movie, I thought was appropriate because it kind of goes with them changing their like strategies and whatnot. Like Godzilla is evolving his physical form. And I thought the music followed that in a way that was appropriate. But so I like appreciated that, but I still did not enjoy it because it was annoying.
No, I agree. It gets very repetitive very fast. But it's even worse in Evangelion because they play that 2 or 3 times every episode. But, speaking of the reusing of music, I may as well talk about this. Pro number 2 is the use of classic sound effects. Now, I don't think the level of passion, I don't find it to be as strong as God damn it, I keep getting distracted. I don't think it's as strong as Godzilla King of the Monsters, but you can still feel that both Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi are huge fans of classic Godzilla. And it's most evident in the reusing of classic sound effects. They reuse the 1954 Godzilla roar for Godzilla's third form. Like right when he mutates, he roars to the sky and you hear that classic roar.
That's so good.
The use of that roar actually is kind of spooky.
Yeah.
Because it's such an odd sound that you'd think would not come out of something that looks like that. So I think that's what they were going for too. So I do get that, and I think it's quite well done. For Godzilla's fourth form, I'm not a big fan of this. They reuse the 70s Godzilla roar, which I don't think that fits at all, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Although the first time he roars to the sky before he fires his atomic breath for the first time, that was a cool scene. And when Godzilla freezes solid, he roars the Return of Godzilla roar, which is ironic. And for his atomic breath, they reused Destroya's micro oxygen beam sound effect. And they do reuse some Akira Fukube music. Namely, it's all pulled from the original Gojira from 1954, but it is fitting.
Yeah, it really is.
And they also reused a lot of 60s and 70s tank and explosion sound effects for whenever the military fights Godzilla. And it took me a minute, especially for the tank sound effects, to catch that. But the explosion sound effect I caught onto just like that. Like if you watch, namely, any of the Showa 70s Godzilla movies, that sound effect is reused constantly. So again, you can pick up on that and just snap a finger. So I appreciate the use of classic sound effects, except for the 70s Godzilla roar. I really wish they could have come up with a different variant of maybe either the Millennium Godzilla roar or maybe the Return of Godzilla roar, but not have it sound exactly the same. They could have just like kind of either deepened it or maybe made it more high pitched to sound more unnatural coming out of this very unnatural Godzilla. But whatever. The use of classic sound effects is really good and very inspiring, and you can tell that these guys are fans. So that's cool. Pro number 2.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. We can go back and forth.
Oh no, a lot of my pros are gonna be like your cons, and I'll just chime in and say that you're crazy.
Okay. Well, pro number 3, I enlist it as international cooperation. I do like that this movie treats Godzilla not just as a threat to Japan. He's an immediate threat to Japan, of course, because that's where he's attacking. But he is treated as a worldwide global threat, because once he's done with Japan, what the hell is he going to do to the rest of the world? Just sit there and sit on his ass? No. And especially with him having the ability to further evolve and reproduce asexually, he is a worldwide cataclysmic event. Not, or actually, no, twice as bad as the 1998 Godzilla, maybe even 3 times. So, and I do appreciate that Japan does ultimately come together to defeat Godzilla mostly on their own, but I do appreciate that they're not so pig-headed and stubborn to not reach out to other countries for help. They reach out to Germany for use of German supercomputers. They reach out to France for French diplomatic stalling with the U.S., and they do reach out to the U.S. for use of their firepower against Godzilla. And I like that the team that tries to combat and defeat Godzilla, it is mostly Japanese, but you can feel the international assistance. There's some American help, there's some French help, and it's this collection of people coming together to solve a big threat. And to quote one of the characters from this film, mentioning how there's a lot of people that are volunteering to work long hours to solve a problem and just work together, it's very inspiring. I have to agree. Yes, it is. Not nearly as much as Godzilla King of the Monsters, but kind of close. Pro number 4, this one's fairly minor. This movie has pretty colors.
Yeah, it does.
Whenever there's an explosion, especially at night, it's a very vibrant, bright, reddish orange color. And when Tokyo is turned into a sea of fire, it's a beautiful, beautiful shot. And it's very vibrantly orange. And it serves as a nice contrast to Godzilla's new color scheme. Godzilla constantly glows red all throughout his body, like there's cracks and scales in his gills glow red, and it's very visually appealing. But Godzilla fires purple atomic rays from his mouth, his tail, and his dorsal spines, and it's a very vibrant shade of purple.
Yeah, I love it.
It also goes into real life. In terms of colors and radiation, purple is the most dangerous color in existence. That's the biggest sign of the highest of high levels of radiation. And so that signifies that, technically speaking, energetically, this might be the most, maybe not powerful form of Godzilla, but probably the most dangerous form of Godzilla.
I would say overall the movie is very gorgeous and beautifully shot, but
that's my next pro. Is the cinematography and camera work is awesome in this movie.
Yeah, but as far as the colors, like the colors that are there are gorgeous, but I thought it wasn't that colorful.
No, it's not.
But I thought that was very appropriate, because I think if it was super colorful, it would have been like too fantastical. And that just wasn't what this movie was supposed to be. Like, sadly, Godzilla versus Kong, That was so good. That was so colorful in all the ways that I was just
I wish
totally
that was
in
more
love
in
with.
this movie.
They're totally different movies.
Much to my chagrin.
It
So she's right. Technically, the film is not very colorful. It's very not 2014 levels necessarily, but it is kind of drab and dry a lot of the time.
No, because 2014 is a brown movie, and this is like a very gorgeous, like it's like really
sepia. No, not sepia tone, but it's just very monochromatic.
Yeah, but in like a really like crisp way.
Yes, there you go. Especially if you watch this on Blu-ray. But when there is color, kind of like Kong Skull Island, now that I think about it, when there is color, it's very vibrant and striking and pretty to look at.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, Spence, yes, I am excited for -1, but it kind of looks like more of this kind of movie, so I'm very cautious.
Wow, so it's going to be great?
You will probably love it from what I've heard. So
I don't understand what... Okay. Yeah, I'm excited. It's a new Godzilla movie.
So I am, yes, it's a new Godzilla movie. I'll eat up anything that's Godzilla. But I kind of lean towards the American stuff. Not to sound like one of those people, but...
You're absolutely one of those people.
Okay, pro number... Oh, yeah, I already talked about this. No, I don't have this here, but this is a pro. Yeah, this movie has great camera work and cinematography. There are a ton of very wide, far away shots to showcase Godzilla's size compared to the rest of Japan. And I want to save talking about Godzilla for later, but Godzilla was doubled in size more so, partially to make him new, but also for practical reasons, because if a 50-meter Godzilla was to walk around in modern day Japan, he would not look that intimidating, because Japanese architecture and cityscapes have like quadrupled in size in the 60 years since the original Godzilla. So they needed to double him in size in order to make him look more threatening and intimidating, but also to make him stick out amongst all the rest of the smaller, more villagey areas of Japan. And he does. He towers over buildings.
Yeah.
There's lots of, wide, far away shots to show him against the landscape, but there's also lots of really like low level shots from like cars or trains looking up at Godzilla to show how large he is. And they're very well done. They're very seamless. They're very smooth and crisp, as she calls it. There's a lot of close-up shots of people's faces as they're talking, which I think is also very Evangelion-esque, especially with the Evangelion music. There's also lots of like shots of the tanks and planes and drones flying around. That's very seamless. There's lots of tight, quick editing, but it's not in a jarring, frenzied, kitschy way. It's tight and quick in a way to like show the... How do I put this? Like, it is fast and tight, but it's not frenzied and chaotic in an annoying way.
Yeah.
Overall, this movie is very well shot. So actually, I have 8 pros.
My input on that is I feel like it was shot in a way that really made you feel like you were right there. Like it almost
There
felt...
you go.
Yeah, it almost felt like a... Not like found footage, not even, you know what I'm saying, like first person actual, like you're behind the camera, not like that, but like still it captured like you're there, because like with the shots where you see Godzilla far away, it's like that's one I don't know, they get portrayed him being a threat in an effective way, like seeing him looming over everything, and then also like when you're in the room with all these people, it's like you're right there trying to figure out what's going on. And like I said earlier, it was like seeing Godzilla for the first time, and it's like, oh my god, what is this, what is happening, and you want to know what's going on, and so it's like you're part of everyone trying to figure out the level of threat, and this like almost frantic urgency to figure out what's going on, how to just everything is so fast paced.
You get swept up in the energy.
Yeah, and they do a really good job of that. And a lot of the scenes and stuff are shot in a really creative way to portray that too. Like the one scene where they figure out the code and you kind of see through the screen, so they're like looking at you.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Yeah, so it just there's all kinds of little things like that I really appreciated, and just added to the whole very impressive feel of the movie. They made it so brilliant.
Pro number 5, it's the great originality, but I kind of did talk about that when talking about the plot. It does feel very original. It feels fresh and new, not as a remake of the original Gojira, but as a reimagining of it in modern times. And it's done in a very fresh and new but familiar way. So that's really all I can say.
Yeah, like how they go about administering the coagulant and stuff like that, and figuring out the origami thing. That was great. Like there's all kinds of original creative stuff in there that I liked.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of elements here too that feel very fresh and new to the Godzilla franchise as a whole. Like the first time that we've seen Godzilla really in this kind of form ever, because he's either a villain trying to destroy humanity or a hero trying to protect humanity. Here, he's just a giant creature that is just living on Earth, but his mere existence is a threat potentially, not to Earth, but to mankind. So he's not deliberately being a threat to mankind. He just existing is a threat to mankind. So pro number 7 would be, I call it the...
I have to run to the bathroom.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll be right back.
Hold on. Pro number 7 for me is what I call the decent military scenes. Whenever Godzilla is being shot at by military, even though he does nothing in response, barely anyway, watching the military try to shoot down Godzilla with tanks, chain guns, missiles, drones, and then bunker buster bombs, those scenes are entertaining, mainly in just how they're shot. Again, going back to that tight, crisp editing, it's done in a way to make it feel action-packed and fast-paced and entertaining. And, there's lots of use of the classic explosion sound effects. The explosions all look really good. There's not just a bunch of fire spewing all over the place. There's dust and sparks and smoke and fire and debris and pieces of buildings and bridges spewing all over the place. It's very messy and chaotic, but in a good way. You really get the sense that the military is trying to throw everything they have against Godzilla, and none of it does a damn thing towards him. Sorry, I have so many hairy edges in my notebook. And, oh, Vic, you better hurry. My last pro number 8, is the great special effects. So, this was the very first Godzilla film where Godzilla was primarily executed through CGI effects for a Japanese film. Hideaki Anno decided to go with, and Shinji Higuchi, they decided to go with motion capture and CGI instead of a man in a suit because they thought a Suitimation Godzilla for today's audiences would look boring. His quote, which I find to be absolutely fucking ridiculous, but whatever. Although I think this does signify that the Suitimation era of Godzilla, at least for main theatrical films, is gone. Unfortunately. Thankfully, though, at least, the CGI and motion capture work for this film, god damn it, my nose, is absolutely phenomenal. I think the CGI and motion capture effects in this film are top-notch 100%. Is that regular Coke?
It's a vanilla.
Oh, they changed the can design. That's cool. There's very, very little practical effects done in this film. For one scene when Kamata-kun Godzilla was rampaging through that little district, there was a blue screen prop that looked vaguely Godzilla-esque that was used, but that was still written over with CGI, but that was used to destroy a scene using miniatures. But behind the scenes, originally they were going to use a 12-foot tall animatronic puppet for Godzilla's fourth form, but this went unused for this movie. Why? I have no clue. Maybe it has to do with them thinking Suitimation is boring, which I think is fucking stupid.
Well, you don't know they thought that.
I don't know for sure, but still, I have seen footage and stills of that puppet. It looks fantastic. And it wasn't a full suit. It was Godzilla from like the waist up, but it still looked really cool. But other than that, which didn't even get used, Godzilla is like 99% CGI and motion capture. Still, though, it's phenomenal. Godzilla is extremely well detailed. He moves very well when he does move. He sounds great. He looks great. He blends in with the landscape and cityscape very well. I don't really think there's any shot of CGI in this movie that looks bad. The only one that looks kind of questionable is Godzilla's first form, when it's just the tail in the ocean. The steam and all the mist from the ocean kind of hides the tail, so this is good. But it still does look a tad cartoony at times. But it's not on screen for very long, so oh well. You could just say, well, his skin's wet, so that's why he looks cartoony. And when Kamata-kun morphs into Godzilla's third form, that effect also does look just a little cartoony, but because it's a very unnatural, appearance for a very unnatural creature, I think it's appropriate that it does look quite cartoony. And also Godzilla's atomic rays all look really good. Again, very vibrant shade of purple, but they all look great. All the explosions and tanks firing and missiles and rays and crumbling buildings all look phenomenal. All the CGI work is very well done, very detailed. Overall, yeah, I think this movie should have won an award for Best Visual Effects in Japan. And if it didn't, I think that's a crime damn shame. Not my favorite special effects for the Godzilla franchise, but they're definitely some of the best. Was that it for your mixed element? Was the music?
Yeah.
Okay. I have 2 mixed elements. The first one is the realism. Now, okay, the reason why this is a mixed element, number one, I don't like it when, like, monster movies or superhero movies are made to be more realistic. I find that extremely boring because it takes all the fun out of the genre, in my opinion, and makes it feel very dry, in my opinion. This is why the Chris Nolan Batman films don't work for me. They take away all the comic book aesthetic and the fun factor of the superhero genre and leaves it a shell of its former self and makes it very dry for me. This movie does take a lot of the fun factor out of the giant monster genre, in my opinion, in making it super realistic, as spot on to if a giant creature was to attack Japan as possible. I don't like it. It's very dry. It's very restrained and very limited, in my opinion. Still, it is done in a very convincing manner. How the government responds to a giant monster, how the civilians respond to a giant monster, how the rest of the world responds to a giant monster. It's very realistic and very convincing and very spot on. It is admirable how well it is done. But the reason why it is such a mixed element, I'm just not a fan of that kind of stuff. It bores me. Still, it is good, just not for me. And mixed element number 2 is Godzilla himself.
Hold on, back up. The realism thing. Oh my God.
You brought us food. You're the best wife ever.
Do you want to know?
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you.
Oh
my God.
Snack.
Thank you. Oh my God. I'm so
Well,
excited.
while she eats that, I'll elaborate on my Godzilla mixed element.
Okay, but first I have to pretzels. The realism thing, how do you like 2014? Because I feel like that's an example of the realism thing being boring. And this is an example of it being like a different type of movie. Because it's like in 2014, it's like, let's take something fun and make it boring. And in this, it's like, let's take something horrifying and actually make it horrifying. Because the original Gojira, you could say like later on when they come out with like Son of Godzilla or you know, something like that, like the more B movie, like, you know, I don't know. You could criticize that, like, oh, what happened to the real, like, serious film? And you're kind of going the opposite way, like, oh, I didn't like that it was a serious monster movie, like it was originally intended to be.
Well, there are elements of that go into 2 of my cons. So I don't really think I'll explain my lack of interest in the realism later on.
Okay, well.
But to answer the 2014 question, it's very simple. Just watch my video. I explained it there better.
Yeah, well, okay. He thinks Bryan Cranston wasn't good in it, so that's all you need to know.
I didn't say he wasn't good in it. I just don't like Bryan Cranston.
There you go.
He's a good actor in that film, but he's my least favorite part of the movie, aside from the darkness.
Okay, Varan.
Did you have me any other way?
Oh my God. Mm.
The cheese is hot, so careful.
It's also on my pants now.
Well, we have baby wipes in here. Ooh, shit. Okay, hold on.
Oh my God, pretzels and cheese.
There you go.
Thank you.
How cheesy. I just love cheesy jokes.
I know.
Okay, so yeah, Godzilla is a mixed element for me in this film. The design is cool. It's very innovative, very fresh and new. But also familiar. Now, behind the scenes, Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi actually wanted to have a traditional-looking Godzilla morph into weird, whack-ass different designs. But Toho vetoed that idea, and they were okay with the opposite approach. Have these weird, whack-ass monsters morph into a more conventional Godzilla look. That I'm okay with. And there's a lot of elements of this new Godzilla that I do like. The dead, expressionless face, the size, the shape, the colors, the color of the atomic breath, the new abilities, the blast of atomic fire, the thin radioactive beam. That looked weird. The multiple beams firing out of his back.
Just really fast. Yes, Bryan Cranston was the best character in 2014. Hands down. Like the main guy whose name I forget every time, who looks like every other man on the face of the earth. He is the least interesting looking person. He is so boring. His character is boring. Why not have Bryan Cranston in the movie? Why not have him be the main character? He was the only interesting one besides Godzilla. And like you didn't have Godzilla or Bryan Cranston in it enough. So what was the point? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I like Godzilla's design. And I like his powers. I don't like any of his other forms. Even Kamada-kun, even though he is cute.
He was terrifying. If you saw that crashing down the street, you wouldn't think,
I'd run away, yeah. But I don't like the design.
I love it. I think it's incredible.
And I would like the fifth and final humanoid Godzilla form if this movie got a fucking sequel. But the reason why Godzilla is such a mixed element, as a character, Godzilla in this movie is damn near non-existent.
That's because he symbolizes things. It doesn't really matter. Like he doesn't have to be a dancing boy like he is in other movies.
I'm not asking for that, but I would like some kind of personality or three-dimensional feel.
That would have thrown off the whole point of the movie.
Even the original Godzilla has more of a personality than this Godzilla, in my opinion. Because at least the original Godzilla showed frustration and irritation towards humanity in the original movie. This Godzilla has absolutely no personality whatsoever. Its character is flatter than a plateau. There's no personality. There's no emotion, which I get the lack of emotion is supposed to be scary and making him look just cold and empty and lifeless. But therein lies the problem. I think it's too lifeless. So to me, it just doesn't come off as being very three-dimensional. Godzilla looks cool, but as a giant monster, I find him to be very basic and plain. I even think Varan is more of an interesting monster than Godzilla in this movie.
I think Godzilla is a terrifying mirror in this movie. And it forces you to see things you don't want to see.
This is so good.
It is. Oh my God. And I think he's so seemingly blank because you're supposed to see the dark side of humanity in him, but not in a lame way. I don't think they did it in a lame way because I don't like movies that are like, man is the real villain. Like, I think this is like the best movie that does that, especially how it ends, but we'll get to that.
Sure. And I do understand that, and I do appreciate it, but it's just not for me. So, yeah, Godzilla's very mixed. But I do have some issues regarding him that are legit cons for me. So,
speaking of you not liking good things, and this Texas guy in the comments, he doesn't like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's all you need to know.
He doesn't either.
So,
at least not the original.
Well, it's like one of the best slasher movies of all time.
It's not. Hey, you still need to work on your 7 Deadly Slashers video.
Well, Texas Chainsaw is going to be way at the top, as it should be.
As much as I would love to continue eating these.
I love pretzels and cheese so much. But anyway, what is your next thing?
I have 10 cons.
Oh my God.
I'm going to try to start off small. Oh, wait, I can't because these are all gargantuan problems.
I doubt it.
Con number 1 is the entire human cast in this movie is boring as fuck.
So, first of all, they're not. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to keep talking. They don't need to be anything in this movie because it's all about Godzilla and what he symbolizes, and the humans are just there to be functional. That's their only purpose. And even though they're there for that, they still manage to be a little bit more than they have to be, in my opinion. I don't think there needed to be any kind of needless romance or any kind of like human. I mean, there was some stuff going on with the humans, but it was like enough so that it wasn't just like the humans were like, enough to make the humans human, which was the point. And I thought it was a very perfect balance, because if you had any more human drama going on, it would have completely ripped you away from the point of the movie, and it would have like just distracted from it being the terrifying monster movie that it was. So what did you want from the human cast?
A little more personality. So the 2 characters that come closest to being like the film's protagonists is Rando Yaguchi and Hideki Akasaka. These are the only 2 characters in the film that feel like they do have personalities, and they do feel like they're, as far as the human side is concerned, they're the closest that feels like a focus for the humans and like the leads of this movie. Yaguchi in particular, he really feels like the main human character. But the problem is that this movie has an ensemble cast of nothing but boring military personnel, boring politicians, boring scientists, and boring civilians. Everybody feels like a mindless automaton. And because they're so boring, so flat, and so mindless, it just feels very dry and bleak and boring, in my opinion. And it just doesn't work for me. And because all the characters are so flat, the story doesn't really feel like it has a through line. It feels like there's no main characters to get the plot really moving. In my opinion, the only thing that gets the plot in motion is Godzilla himself, and everybody just reacts to Godzilla arriving, which is fine, but this will lead into another issue that I have. Con number 2, too much technobabble and political jargon. A lot of this movie is taken up by scientists speaking in technobabble, which that's the more engaging side, because you're at least engaged in how scientists are trying to determine what Godzilla is and how to defeat him. So that's okay. But a majority of this film is taken up with politicians just saying, oh, we need to protect this knowledge from the other countries, and we need to protect this knowledge from the public, and we need to go into this room and then talk about some bullshit, and then go into this room and talk about some bullshit, and then cancel a meeting and schedule another one, and then go to this room to discuss that meeting.
Well, I know that a lot of it was like satire about Japanese government, which a lot of that, even though I knew it was there, I'm sure there was so much lost on me just because of, I'm not a part of that world, but I still get that was a major part of the movie. And there was some like darkly funny things about that. But I didn't think there was a lot of like technobabble necessarily. But I just feel like there was this mood of just like panic. Like, how would you feel if you were you found out that this was happening? Wouldn't you be glued to whatever source that you'd find news, and you'd hear about a lot of stuff you didn't understand, but you'd just be on the edge of your seat, like trying to get any kind of information you possibly could to understand it better and feel less panicked? And I just feel like I said earlier, the feeling of being right there, it was like that plus the feeling of being on the edge of your seat watching the news, kind of. And I just thought it was fitting. I didn't, that's not my favorite kind of movie, but I did appreciate that take on a Godzilla movie. I thought it fit really well. And I wouldn't watch this movie over and over and over because of that, but I did think that it was done well.
Technically, she's right. And technically, yes, this is satire. This actually goes into con number 3 for me. Overuse of Fukushima satire. So for those who don't know, quickly, in 2011, there was a massive earthquake and tsunami that devastated Fukushima, and there is a nuclear power plant that melted down. And this disaster was made worse because the Japanese government had a very slow and sluggish response to try to contain it and shut it down, endangering the lives of millions of people and contaminating thousands upon thousands of resources. And there was a lot of backlash and outcry against a lot of people over how the Japanese government responded to this. And this movie does have a lot of satire, and Godzilla is very evocative of the Fukushima disaster. And because the Japanese government, I know this is the purpose, but especially in the first half hour, when the Japanese government is first saying, "Oh, it's just an underwater volcano. Oh, it's just a submarine. No, it's got to be a submarine, or it's got to be a volcano. Hey guys, I think it's a monster. No, there's absolutely no way it's a monster. It's totally an underwater volcano. Nope, it's a monster. There's a giant tail coming out. Oh, well, okay, well then it's just going to stay there and move on. It's not going to come ashore. Guys, it's coming ashore. Oh, okay, well it's just gonna walk around and then go back into the ocean. It's evolving and shooting down planes. Oh, okay. In the first half hour, especially, the Japanese government looks so incompetent. Like, it's, I do get it. It is almost laughable, but I think for me, it's just frustrating because, like, these are supposed to be our protagonists, these guys are morons. There's so much factual evidence that's blasting them right in the face, and they're acting like complete idiots. And they misprioritize shit constantly. One guy is just like, no, we should just destroy it. That's the only thing that we need to do right now. Well, how about we try to either capture it or just drive it away? No, we need to destroy it. Or we need to evacuate civilians. No, we need to investigate this creature. We should probably evacuate civilians because this might cause some damage in nearby areas. Now we need to focus on the monster. I get it. I know it's satire. I know that it brings to mind Fukushima. I get it. It's shoved down your throat, and it's overdone way too goddamn much for my tastes.
I think it was good for setting up the importance of decision making by showing the chaos that results from the uncertainty and lack of confidence about making a decision. And that theme is revisited over and over and over. It's the basic theme of the movie, pretty much. And then when that round of people pretty much gets eliminated, then there's a more confident group that's like, all right, let's do this, and they do it.
That is true. So when the prime minister and all of his aide get killed off, the focus of just trying to defeat Godzilla takes center stage. And this is when the plot of the movie gets stronger. But unfortunately, this leads into my next two cons. There's a lack of threat / urgency. And I think this movie is paced pretty poorly. The first half hour is nothing but political technobabble with very brief 10-second snippets of monster action. And you want to see what the monster's doing, but they keep cutting back to the politicians doing political things. And for me, it's boring. And when Kamada-kun finally arrives and is going on his little rampage, that's a little entertaining, especially when it topples over an apartment building. That's a cool spectacle. And when Kamada-kun morphs into the third form of Godzilla, that's a cool visual. But then it dives back into the ocean, and then we're just stuck with the human characters. It's boring. And the movie's pace just drags like crazy. 47 minutes into a 2-hour-long movie, Godzilla proper finally shows up in his fourth form. And that 20-minute section of him walking through the city, being shot at, and then firing his atomic ray for the first time, that whole segment is arguably the best part of the movie. But once Godzilla goes inactive for, I think it was 15 days, that whole section, after Godzilla stops for a while, and then the commencement of Operation Yashiori, it's like a 20-minute section. It is insufferable to sit through. There's a lack of focus, a lack of urgency, and a lack of a through line. It just feels like a random string of events and people just jibber-jabbering and political talk and political scheming. And it just... Jesus Christ. It just goes on and on and on and on. 2/3 of that section could have been cut out, and it would have had the exact same impact. The movie does salvage itself once Operation Yashiori starts up, and that also probably is tied with Godzilla's atomic breath as the best part of the movie. And that's when the movie gets a little more entertaining. But yeah, the film is paced very poorly, and there's a lack of threat and urgency. The lack of threat goes into my next con. This movie has very poor monster action. All Godzilla does when he's on land is just walk in a straight line. He's just walking and waving his tail.
If it was like a crazy action movie, it would have taken away from the point. It wasn't that kind of movie. I disagree.
You could have done both. When Godzilla is just walking in a straight line, for me, a lot of his threat and intimidation. Okay, I do know that potentially this Godzilla could take over the entire world. That's why I really think they should not have cut a scene where they see a giant clump of Godzilla's flesh sprouting teeth and eyeballs. That would have been more effective in showcasing, okay, yeah, because they do talk about Godzilla reproducing asexually, but we don't see any effects of that in the existing film. But that little snippet of a scene, that would have at least been something to prove, okay, yeah, this thing needs to be stopped. If this Godzilla is not stopped, the whole world will be taken over by Godzillas. But they cut that scene. Why? I have no idea. I think they shot themselves in the foot.
I think they got that point across in a more I don't know. I think it was more effective the way they did it at the end. I think that would have lessened the what?
Moving on.
What?
No. Continue your thought. I don't like the ending.
I love the ending.
Mm-mm.
Do you like have like what do you think? Do you want to talk about that now?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So with Godzilla just walking around in a straight line, it would have been a little more entertaining if he was to like lash his tail out and knock over buildings a lot more and actually take more of a, what's the word? He doesn't just instinctively react to planes and tanks shooting at him. He just keeps walking and he relies on his like energy weapons to take them out. I kind of wish he was a little more actively attacking buildings and planes and tanks rather than just passively walking past and maybe lashing out at tanks and buildings and planes. Because this is another issue I have, because of that Godzilla, he just walks in a straight line. He just feels very stiff. Like, it feels restrained and limited, partially because of Godzilla's tiny ass arms. That's the only thing about this Godzilla design that I hate. I hate how tiny his arms are. Because
they're still growing, and I love the way his fingers are all
always curled up. Yeah,
I love that.
Sure, you could say that he could mutate himself to have larger arms, which I'm sure they would, but it just feels very restrained. Like, I would have liked to see Godzilla like actively swiping at planes or buildings to topple them over instead of just walking in a straight line. It's very boring, flat, and plain.
Well, if he had done more like monstery action stuff, it would have been awesome and fun. And that was not the point. Like, you were supposed to, like, it was keeping that feel of being in the movie where it was horrifying. Like, oh my God, what's happening? We're going to die. And if he's being awesome, it's not so much, oh my God, it's, whoa, this is great. And that's not what the movie is.
I think they could have done both.
They could have, but I just feel like, you know, you could put cayenne pepper in ice cream and it could be good, or you just don't feel like having the cayenne pepper in ice cream.
Oh my God. All right, moving on. Con number 7 is the lack of Godzilla. So discounting the first 3 forms, even then, those 3 forms aren't on screen very much. This is a 2-hour-long movie. Not counting credits, I think it's 1 hour and 54 minutes. I'd say Godzilla maybe has 10 minutes of screen time. At the very most, maybe about 14 minutes. Now, they do somewhat compensate for this because the movie literally is about the world's reaction to Godzilla. So they're always talking about him. So kind of like what they do in the original Dracula with Bela Lugosi and Dracula. You don't see him very much, but the characters are always talking about him. So at least he's in mind.
It's another movie he doesn't appreciate.
No, I don't. So that is a somewhat compensation, but because there's aspects of Godzilla that I really like, I want to see more of that. But the movie feels like it's holding back on Godzilla screen time, and it's frustrating as fuck. I'd almost say it might be a bit worse than Godzilla 2014.
No, because at least in Shin Godzilla, he is just like jaw dropping every time you see him.
So is Godzilla in Godzilla 2014.
No.
And Godzilla is more entertaining to watch in Godzilla 2014.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Con number 8. This is kind of minor. Lack of another monster. Outside of Gojira and the Return of Godzilla, I don't much think Godzilla can hold an entire movie by himself. The same issue that I have with King Kong 1976. Kong himself is not strong enough to carry an entire film just by himself. You need something else to bounce him off of to make him look more awesome. And with this Godzilla not doing very much in terms of his monster action, he feels very flat and stiff, and he's not strong enough to carry the film by himself. He's not interesting and engaging enough to watch to carry this movie all by himself, in my opinion.
I disagree.
I know you do. And con number 9 and 10. Well, 9 leads into number 10. I think the film has a very anticlimactic ending.
Lord have mercy.
Namely, when Godzilla is frozen solid, it's just like that. I think it would have been a cooler effect if bits like Godzilla started freezing himself gradually over his body, kind of like what's an example? Kind of like the Kraken in the 2010 Clash of the Titans. But for Godzilla's entire body to just be like, it's very abrupt and sudden, which leads it to be being very anticlimactic, in my opinion.
Okay, here's the thing. You're in such suspense about whether or not this coagulating thing is going to work. And they're saying, like, okay, it's at 20%, 35%, 50%, whatever. You're like, oh my God, is this going to work? We don't even know if this is going to work. This probably isn't going to work. Oh my God. And it's just like so suspenseful to sane people who like the movie. And then like they finally get it. Like, you think there's no way they're going to administer all of it. He's going to get up. He's going to kill everybody. And then it's like, oh my God, they got 100% of it. And then he gets up. Oh my God, it didn't work. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And then he freezes. And it's like, oh my God, thank God. So the whole thing is like you're on the edge of your seat and you're talking about it like, oh, it just ends.
Well, no, I get that, and she is right, but I just don't like how Godzilla just is flash frozen just like that. I would have preferred the gradual freeze, like his tail freezes up, then his legs, and then his arms, and then finally his whole body is frozen. Like he's...
I feel like that's needlessly dramatic. I don't know. That's your opinion, and
that's what I would have preferred. It being so sudden, it's very anticlimactic. And this leads me into the biggest problem of all that I have with this movie is the bullshit cliffhanger ending. Not a fan.
The ending is the cherry on top of the perfect masterpiece that the movie is. The ending is so good. What is your issue with it? Please tell me.
Part of it is,
and do not say it's because there's another movie. We're talking about there's not another movie. We're talking about this movie.
See, that is why I have an issue.
See, that's
with it.
Ridiculous. That is crazy. That's why his name is Varan, because he is unbelievable. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, I have an issue with this movie because there's not another completely separate movie. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this movie. When you first saw this movie before you knew there was not going to be a sequel, what was your impression of the ending?
Still frustratingly vague and ambiguous. Now, I get it. It's like John Carpenter's The Thing. The ending is ambiguous. Will Godzilla reawaken, or will he always stay frozen? There's the potential for that, but it's there if you want it. But this more so just ties into my issue with Toho's attitude with how they're treating Godzilla, at least in Japan. For a long time, it's been Godzilla anthology. They keep reintroducing new ideas and new variants, and they just keep limiting it to just one movie. And having a bunch of anticlimactic endings and cliffhanger endings.
You're talking about the movies, like outside of the story of the movie.
I'm getting to that.
We'll get to it.
And because there's elements of this movie that I want to see more of, for this movie to end on such an anticlimactic cliffhanger note, for me, it's frustrating as fuck. It feels like a big spit in the eye for how ambiguous and abrupt this movie is. It's almost as bad as no, I can't tell you that. Nope, can't tell you that. The ending to Gamera 3. There could have been more, but they choose not to make more. And I don't like that decision. It just doesn't sit well with me. I get that the ending is haunting and spooky when you see all these humanoid Godzillas reaching out to the sky, sprouting out of Godzilla's tail. That's cool. I want to see more of that. Nope, no sequel, nothing. Fuck you. It's just like the ending to Gamera Revenge of Iris. We could see Gamera take on this gigantic legion of Gauss descending upon Japan, but no, we're not going to show you that. Nope.
Hey, you know what movie's better than Godzilla 2014?
King of the Monsters.
Gamera Super Monster.
I pray she's joking.
My thoughts on the ending. First of all, I had two very different reactions because I've only seen this movie twice so far.
Really?
Yeah. It's not super rewatchable. Like
no,
I said,
this movie's even less rewatchable than Godzilla 2014. Way less.
I would almost agree if 2014 was better. But I don't know. It's like a lot of stuff that I think is really, really good isn't necessarily something I'd watch a lot. So yeah, True. I've only seen this one twice. But yeah, the first time I watched it, the ending really struck me. It's one of the top 3 most like powerful endings I have ever the most. I don't even have words. I was hit so hard by it. It just left me with this horrible, deep, sinking panic, awful feelings. Like, oh my God. Because it was just so like, oh, we're doomed. Like, that was the feeling I got. My hair is so whack. But the first time I watched it, my impression was very different from this time around watching it, which is interesting. But anyway, the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice that the Godzillas were humanoid. I just, because I never went back and looked closely at it. I just saw basically what was going on, and I just saw that he was like I don't know, sending out little versions of himself. I didn't, whatever. And my impression was he's going to unfreeze, and so are these things, and humanity's just doomed. And it's just a matter of time. And it was just so horrible in the best horror movie way. And I can't even describe the feeling I got. There's 2 other movies that gave me that feeling of just deep dread. So I'm not going to say it right now. It's so not related.
So,
but anyway, I might say it later, but anyway, yeah, it was just, I was very impressed by that, and it just left a huge impression on me. This time around, I had a very different feeling from it. I interpreted the whole ending completely different. Instead of doom, I got it there was actually hope, and look what was prevented. And I didn't even get the impression of oh my God, this is a preview of what's going to happen, because Godzilla is of course going to come back. This time around, it's okay, they did triumph, and this is what their final actual focus, working together, decision making is led up to, is they actually stopped this. This would have been the end. Earlier in the movie, when the prime minister is I don't know what to do, when they're about to shoot at Godzilla in his second form or third form.
Yeah.
Who knows if it would have done any damage, but they're oh, well, these 2 people might get killed or injured, so let's not do it. And then Godzilla leaves. It's okay, probably wouldn't have stopped him anyway, but things only got worse from there. And everything from that point on just got worse and worse and worse. Just they couldn't just decide on anything, and it just got crazy with the atomic breath happening and everything. It's just and then when they thought okay, anything could happen, he could sprout wings and the whole world is going to end and whatever. And then finally, when they go through with the coagulating thing, we have to do this, and they work together and get more time and everything. Their plan does involve people dying, and they know that, and they go through with it anyway. And they just go through with their decision confidently. And then you see at the very end, if they didn't do this,
they were willing to make a sacrifice.
Yeah,
the previous prime minister was not.
Yeah, but they went through and just did it, instead of just I don't know what should we do, and it's they got it just in time before the whole world was taken over by these xenomorph babies. and my impression at the end of watching it this time was just this utter sense of relief and victory, the complete opposite of my impression the first time watching it. So I thought that was really interesting. But I do really appreciate how it could be interpreted in whatever way, because it really could go either way.
See, that is true, and I do appreciate it. That is a cool way to look at it, and that gives me a slight appreciation for the ending as a way to justify it not getting a sequel. The thing is, for me, though, I get it. I still don't like it. I wanted more. I wanted at least 2 sequels to this movie. But for Toho to just ostensibly be like, nope, just this, nothing else. It's very off-putting and it's very frustrating for me because there's things about this that I do like and I want to see more of. But their attitude of refusing to give us more is, like I said, very off-putting and frustrating. So this movie's ending just does not sit well with me. It's the same issue that I have with the ending to Gamera 3, Revenge of Iris. They could have given us another Gamera film after that, but they chose not to. And it's a damn shame. To which I say, fuck you. So, yeah, I don't like the ending to this movie. It doesn't sit well with me at all. I wanted to see more, but they're not willing to give us more.
I wouldn't complain if there was more. I would love that. The more Godzilla, the better. I don't care how ridiculous Godzilla gets. Like, there's some crazy Godzilla things out there, and I do not care. I like all Godzilla anything, but this movie, I don't think not having more of it hurt it at all. I think it stands alone very well and effectively as its own masterpiece.
Yes and no for me. Like, I kind of almost view this movie and Godzilla versus Megaguirus, in my opinion, are the most anthology of Godzilla anthology films, which kind of like Terminator Genesis is both good but also bad. So, final thoughts on Shin Godzilla?
That and it makes me want to watch the Attack on Titan movies, which I didn't have any interest in before. But that's a totally different thing. But yeah, I think you are really missing out on a great movie. It's a shame you don't like it or several other great movies. But I love it. And I'm glad it exists.
Okay. Yeah, Shin Godzilla is not for me. There's things about this movie that are very admirable and very impressive on a technical and objective scale. But personally speaking, this is not my bag. This is not my kind of Godzilla. I don't like solo Godzilla films. Haven't seen -1, but thus far, this is the only solo Godzilla movie that I really don't like. And in general, neither of the other solo Godzilla movies are in my favorites lists. So, this is not my bag. This is not my kind of kaiju film. This is not my kind of Godzilla movie. I prefer Godzilla fighting another monster, him being portrayed more as anti-heroic at least, and I like the more conventional monster versus monster stuff. Not to say that I dislike different things, but there are certain things where I do prefer the status quo. And this is as far removed from the status quo as you can get. And it just doesn't sit well with me. Which is why my rating for Shin Godzilla will be a 4 out of 10. A 0.5 for every one of my pros. This is not one of my favorite Godzilla movies. I like it less and less each time I watch it. And I'm actually going to go on a limb and say, even you can't deny this, potentially. This might be the least rewatchable Godzilla film of the entire series. The only things that come close are the anime Godzilla films, but that's for different reasons, mainly because all three are really fucking bad.
I haven't seen them, so I can't say. They're probably great. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
You'll find out next year. So, Vic, anything to plug?
Not yet, but there will be. You want to know my rating?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
5 bags of popcorn. Aside from that, I think it's because of its lack of rewatchability, I give it a solid 9 out of 10. If it wasn't so, I wouldn't say a chore, but if there wasn't like, because so much of it is like edge of your seat, it's not the most enjoyable.
Fun.
Yeah. And my favorite movies, I like to relax and have fun with, and this isn't exactly one of those. If not for that, it would be a 10 out of 10, like hands down. But because of that, it's a 9 out of 10, but it is a strong 9 out of 10 because it's great.
4 out of 10 for me. So that will do it for Super Kaiju Binge for this year, and that'll do it for my channel for this year. I'm going to be taking the rest of December off, or all of December off, and I'm going to be returning in January with new videos, and the return of Super Kaiju Binge, and the return of an old friend. Post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. Thank you very much to all those who've watched this, and thank you to all those who've watched Super Kaiju Binge throughout this year. This was a damn good year for Super Kaiju Binge. Definitely. Yeah. And thank you, Victoria, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Even if our thoughts and opinions differ.
Mm-hmm.
It was still fun.
Yeah.
So overall, yeah, go out and just watch some Godzilla movies or watch some of your favorite films. Happy birthday to the Big G, because her and I like to do month-long birthday celebrations.
Woo!
And yeah, just go out and enjoy life. Have yourself a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And remember, I will see you guys in the next video.